parole. As to count 4, for the offense of attempted murder, violation of Revised Code Section 2923.02a, felony first degree, court offense of a term of 11 years in the Ohio Department of Corrections. As to specification 4, to count 1, court defendant.
She left war behind, believing she had found safety in America. When the bombs began falling over Kiev, Iryna Zarutska and her family spent weeks hiding in a cold basement, their days marked by fear and darkness. Her father stayed behind, the law wouldn't let him leave, while Iryna, her mother, sister, and little brother fled across borders in search of peace. The journey was long and uncertain, filled with crowded trains, tearful goodbyes, and silent prayers. When she finally stepped off the plane in Charlotte, North Carolina, she carried only a small suitcase and a sketchbook filled with dreams of a new life. In the months that followed, she worked at a pizzeria, enrolled in college, and practiced her English late into the night. She learned to drive, made friends, and laughed again. For the first time since the war began, Iryna felt a sense of calm, the belief that she had escaped the chaos forever. America was her second chance, a place where she thought she was safe. After months of uncertainty, Iryna finally began to settle into the rhythm of her new life in Charlotte. Every morning, she left the small apartment she shared with her mother and siblings, carrying a backpack that still smelled faintly of home. The streets were quiet, lined with oak trees instead of sirens and smoke. She'd catch the Lynx Blue Line train into the city, headphones in, watching the sunlight flicker across the glass towers as she thought about the art classes she used to take in Kiev. She had once restored old paintings, carefully bringing color back to cracked faces and faded skies, and now, in this new country, she hoped to restore something within herself too. She found work at a small pizzeria on South Boulevard, a place that smelled of flour, garlic, and laughter. Her co-workers teased her gentle Ukrainian accent, and she laughed along, wiping flour from her cheek and practicing English words between orders. Customers liked her calm smile, a smile that had survived air raids, hunger, and loss. After her shifts, she'd sit on a bench outside the restaurant, eating a slice of pizza she couldn't afford to waste, scrolling through English lessons on her phone. One day, she'd whisper to herself, "I will go back to art." At home, she transformed her room into a tiny studio. The walls were covered with sketches, faces of her family, fragments of Kiev, and sunsets over Carolina rooftops. Her little brother often sat beside her, asking what she was drawing. "Home," she'd say softly, though she wasn't sure which place she meant anymore. On weekends, her boyfriend helped her learn to drive. They'd drive through quiet suburban streets, windows down, laughter spilling out into the night. She loved those drives, they made her feel free, like the world had finally opened its doors to her. In the evenings, she studied online classes from the community college, learning about art restoration in America. She stayed up past midnight, her desk lit by a single lamp, painting delicate strokes on old furniture she found in thrift stores. Each brushstroke felt like a heartbeat, a small act of healing, of hope. Her mother often told her to rest, but Iryna would just smile and say, "Mama, I'm not tired. I'm rebuilding." And in many ways, she was. She was rebuilding a life that war had broken, a future that once seemed lost. She was slowly learning that safety was not just about walls and distance, but about belonging. In every brushstroke, every pizza slice, every English word she practiced, Iryna was restoring more than art, she was restoring herself. For the first time in years, she dared to dream again. She believed her life, like the paintings she once saved, could be made whole. Night had fallen over Charlotte. The city lights shimmered across glass towers and quiet streets. The evening rush was fading, and the hum of the Lynx Blue Line echoed softly through the rails, the sound of people heading home, unaware that this night would end in tragedy. Iryna Zarutska had just finished her late shift at the pizzeria. She was tired, her apron still faintly dusted with flour, her hair tied back neatly. It was a routine she'd followed countless times before: clock out, wave goodbye to her coworkers, walk to the train, and ride home through the calm of the night. To her, the train had always felt safe, familiar faces, quiet music, the city she was learning to call home. At 9:46 p.m., surveillance cameras captured her boarding the train at Scalybark station. She took a seat near the window, scrolling through her phone, maybe texting her mother to say she was on her way. Her reflection glowed faintly in the dark glass, peaceful, ordinary, human. But just a few feet behind her sat a man she had never seen before, DeCarlos Brown Jr., 34 years old, restless, muttering to himself. He had been riding the train for hours that evening, laughing quietly, moving erratically, lost somewhere between reality and madness. He had no ticket, no destination, and no reason anyone could understand. 2 security officers had passed by him earlier that night, walking through the cars, but they hadn't stopped. The system had rules, and limits. The cameras kept watching, silent and unblinking. For minutes after Iryna sat down, Brown reached into the pocket of his hoodie. The train was quiet, only the steady click of the wheels beneath them. And then, without warning, he lunged forward. 3 quick motions. A flash of silver. A scream that never had time to rise. Iryna gasped, confusion, pain, disbelief. The knife struck her from behind, once in the neck, twice in the back. Passengers froze. Someone shouted for help. She tried to stand, her hand clutching the seat, but the world blurred around her. Blood stained her shirt, her phone fell to the floor, the screen still glowing, the train didn't stop immediately. The officers were in another car, too far to see what had happened. Within seconds, she collapsed to the floor, her breathing shallow, her eyes searching for something, maybe help, maybe the face of home. By the time passengers rushed to her side, she was slipping away. Her body went still. The hum of the train continued. When the doors opened at the East/West Boulevard station, Brown stepped off calmly. Witnesses say he mumbled, "I got that white girl." Police officers tackled him seconds later on the platform. The knife was still in his hand. Iryna never made it home that night. The girl who had fled war, who had survived air raids, hunger, and exile, died in a city she believed would protect her. In the city she thought was safe, no one could save her. The screen fades to black. Sirens wail in the distance. The hum of the train fades into silence. Morning light fell over Charlotte, but the city felt different, quieter, colder. By dawn, the news had already spread. Ukrainian refugee killed on Charlotte train. Her photo, a smiling 23-year-old with bright eyes and a sketchbook in her hands, filled every screen. At the East/West Boulevard station, police tape fluttered in the wind. The train platform was empty, except for the flowers people began to leave one by one. Someone placed a candle near the yellow line. Someone else taped a photo of Iryna to the pole where she had taken her last breath. Within hours, that single corner of the city had turned into a memorial, a silent river of grief. Across North Carolina, people woke up to disbelief. How could this happen here? How could a young woman who escaped a war die on a train in America, the place she thought was safe? News channels filled with talking heads, each with their own version of the story. Reporters replayed the footage over and over, the same 4 minutes that showed the unthinkable. Anchors used words like senseless, random, unprovoked. But beneath those words, another truth began to echo, a deeper anger. City leaders stood before cameras, promising answers. Mayor Vi Lyles called the killing a tragedy that cuts to the soul of our community. Governor Josh Stein said North Carolina must fix a broken system that allowed this man to walk free. And then came the national voices, political, emotional, divided. Some called it a story of failure, of a justice system that ignored mental illness, of transit security that wasn't there when it mattered most. Others turned it into politics, crime rates, bail reform, mental health budgets, race. The arguments drowned out the silence of her family's grief. Social media became a battlefield. Videos of the stabbing spread online, millions of views, millions of comments. Some demanded justice, others blamed the system, the city, the country itself. And in the noise of outrage, her name became more than a name, it became a question. Murals began to appear, first in Charlotte, then across other cities. Her face painted in blue and yellow, eyes looking upward, words written beneath. Justice for Iryna. She came for peace. Never again. Candlelight vigils were held across the state. People stood shoulder to shoulder, holding signs and whispering prayers in English and Ukrainian. Her mother stood among them, clutching a small photo of her daughter, the same one from her graduation in Kiev. She didn't speak, she just stared at the candles, the same way she had stared at the flames in their bomb shelter 3 years earlier. The tragedy reached far beyond Charlotte. The Ukrainian flag was raised outside City Hall. President Volodymyr Zelensky mentioned her by name at the United Nations, calling her death a wound that crosses borders. In America, politicians debated Iryna's law, a promise that her death would not be forgotten. But behind every headline, every speech, every post, was one haunting truth: no law, no words, no justice could bring her back. Her story had become a mirror, reflecting everything America wanted to believe about safety, and everything it was afraid to admit about its failures. Her name became a symbol, of fear, of failure, of a nation asking how this could happen. The camera pans over the empty train car. A single candle flickers on the seat where she once sat. The flame trembles, then fades into darkness. Weeks passed, but the shock did not fade. The flowers at the East/West Boulevard station had wilted, but new ones kept appearing, fresh roses, Ukrainian flags, small handwritten notes. The candles melted away and were replaced again every evening by strangers who refused to forget her name. Charlotte was no longer just a city to the people who knew her story, it had become a reminder of how fragile safety could be. Inside the North Carolina state capitol, her face appeared on screens during late-night sessions. Lawmakers spoke her name in trembling voices as they debated what went wrong. House Bill 307, they called it Iryna's Law. A bill that promised change, stricter bail conditions, mental health reviews, tougher sentencing, even the revival of capital punishment in the state. For many, it was justice in ink, the kind written by those who never met her but felt her loss all the same. As the votes were cast, the chamber fell silent. 81 in favor, the clerk announced. Then applause, hesitant at first, then rising. Cameras flashed. North Carolina's governor signed the bill into law.